right, well, everyone, welcome. Thank you for coming. We have some exciting things tonight. A couple of things. The sign-in sheet is over by the food. Make sure if you've come before, just a little check mark or an X at the end is great. If you're new, there's a couple of lines on the last page, and it's alphabetical by first name. The SCI Model Systems Grant is teaming up with Mount Sinai, working on an app that will hopefully help with modifications. It helps lay out a floor plan through an iPad app and a laser, and then from there you can discuss modifications and stuff. So if you're interested in helping us out with that, you would have to do a little bit of a training, take an iPad home, do your floor plan of your home, and submit it through the app, and then bring the iPad back to us. And we are paying you. I'm not exactly sure how much. We are recruiting right now. We don't have everything figured out just yet. So if you're interested, let me know. I can get you on the list and contact you when we are ready to start everything. We do have some dates for Blossom. I was not as prepared as I thought I was, and I didn't write them down, but if you got the email for this meeting, it is down towards the bottom. I added the dates for the rest of the year for all the meetings with the speakers and sponsors that I have set up so far, and I'll update those every month as I get them worked out. And of course we're on Facebook with all of that too. I think we're working on getting Indians tickets. I have not received an update about that, so stay tuned for that, and I'm sure we're getting more.
There were issues around availability. I know the dates we wanted, there weren't enough tickets available.
Okay. And I'm sure we'll be getting more Key Bank series to the theater once, all of that. So stay tuned for that as well. Oh, there is one thing. United Spinal National is asking each chapter to send in their membership list. It helps us keep track of numbers for when we're advocating and putting all of those things together. So if you are on our email list, unless you tell me, your email will be sent to United Spinal National. They will be signing you up for the free United Spinal membership. You'll get the New Mobility magazine. If you don't want me to send your first, last name, and email address, let me know, and I will take it off before I send it in. I do have an email set up to send out tomorrow, kind of explaining in more detail why they're asking for this information, and just reply to that email and let me know to take your info off, and I will not send it in. I think that's all of the announcements I have. Mark from Hollister is here. He brought our yummy food. Thank you so much. You do a lot to support us, and I don't know if you want a few minutes to
I'll
talk.
just take a couple minutes.
Okay,
yeah.
sure.
So if you didn't hear, I'm Mark. I'm with Hollister. Been with the company for 16 years and been calling on you for 14 years. I consider a lot of you family, especially this guy, but I want to thank Megan and Herb for allowing me to attend tonight. Just some updates with Hollister. I brought some new educational material. So a couple years ago, we actually partnered with the Christopher Reeve Foundation and provided them educational grants. The first educational booklet we came out with them was the bladder management book. A year ago, we came out with the compendium bowel management book. Both of these Bridget has up on the 6th floor. what I'm excited about is we actually have a brand new publication. This is going to be more for a newer injury that's getting ready to transition back into their home environment. We provided an educational grant for the Christopher Reeve. They also did it in conjunction with Craig Rehab, which is a well-known rehab in the Denver area. So your group is the first one to get 12 of these hot off the press. They don't even have this up on the 6th floor yet. So in addition, as I've come, I've always brought samples because I felt it was important for you to have the opportunity to try some of the newer technology out there. So I did bring some of our Vapro closed system, pre-hydrated, ready to use out of the package. Our old one actually was a gel technology, and the catheter was in the bag, so it was somewhat difficult to advance out of the bag. With the new one, pre-hydrated, ready to use, for your protection, we actually put a protective sleeve on the catheter so you never touch contaminate it, and there's an introducer tip, so this actually goes into the urethra first, and then it allows the catheter to bypass the first 10 millimeters of the distal urethra where there's going to be bacteria at, which should help reduce any risk of infection. Collection bags attached. And then if your insurance does not allow for a closed system, we actually have the sister product, a hydrophilic straight catheter, again, pre-hydrated, ready to use. We actually use pure water to hydrate. We find it's a little better for hydration. Yes, it is. It's a little better hydration rather than like a saline-based solution. And the saline, where it'll leave little spots on dark clothing, the water won't. And take this out of the package, and there's actually a gripper on it. Again, we want to reduce any risk of infection. This allows the user to slide this off and actually do the insertion without having to grasp the catheter and risk getting any bacteria that could have been transferred from your hands or your iPhone or your car keys. It allows you to catheterize and lower your risk of infection. So I brought 14 French and 16 French samples. Feel free to grab some. Megan has them. Does anybody have any questions? I've done this so often. I know most of you, when I look at the faces, I see a couple new ones, but if you have questions, she's got my email and phone number. Feel free to reach out. And again, that's all I wanted to do. I'll let you guys get on with your meeting. I'll thank you both again for allowing me to attend tonight.
Thank you. Okay. Awesome. One thing that I did forget is there are some things back there on the table. There's, I think, some male depends, some chucks, some bacitracin packets, some lube packets, and I think they're condom catheters. Just a couple of things back there. If you need some, take all. They are free to a good home. Okay, so now we have Matt here from the Metroparks. He's going to show us some fun things and some recreation programs that they have to offer.
Megan, are you going to be holding the iPad?
It'll be on here. I can move it as needed.
Because what I would like to do is I'll probably end up bringing the kayak in so everyone can see it.
I can move as
Well,
needed.
we'll start out with the introduction. My name is Matt with Outdoor Recreation at the Cleveland Metroparks. My fancy full title is Outdoor Recreation Inclusion Specialist. If you take all of the words out of that, my job is to make sure that activities and certain aspects of the park are inclusive and that they're open to everyone regardless of ability. Now, really quick, just going to go over a little bit of the history of the Metroparks. This is new to me. I've only been with the Metroparks for about a year. They were able to take me out of the private sector and get me to come. So there's still a lot about the Metropark system that I'm learning. But as it stands, as originally, it was started in 1917. This number has actually changed a little bit. We're close to around 20, almost 2,400 or 24,000 acres. We have the 18 reservations, we have golf courses, we have tons of miles of trail, and that includes also our all-purpose trail. We have hundreds of miles of all-purpose trail that are in the metro parks. We're also one of the few park systems that has as much land, that also has a zoo that's part of our organization. And this is another number that we're trying to bump up. It's looking like 2019, we're going to be around 50 million visitors to the various park systems. That includes zoo, golf, Merwin's Wharf, like we were talking about some of the new places, especially with what's been going on in Edgewater, and trying to develop that program to make sure that that's like a spot for individuals in Cleveland during the summer. One of the things that we are really trying to do is integrate is the outdoor education piece, the recreation piece, and making sure that there's opportunities for the recreation, the education, and to experience zoological initiatives. Basically, the Metro Parks, we want you outdoors. It's as simple as that. And I think one of the things that impressed me when I moved up here is I was not, as somebody that is not a Cleveland local, I did not realize how blessed Cleveland is to have the Metro Park system. I've had the privilege of traveling to a lot of places in this country and outside of this country, and to be able to say that we have what we have here is it's a resource and it's a blessing at the same time. So making sure that everybody understands that there's availability for programming with the Metro Parks in the area of outdoor recreation. Now, I will be touching on some certain things like with the zoo and some of the things that we're doing with Culture City, which is a sensory initiative. I'm also going to be talking about a little bit of the things that we do with our solo golf carts and programs like that. But mainly this piece is going to be focusing on adaptive outdoor recreation. Things like kayaking, things like canoeing, stand-up paddleboarding, rock climbing, things of those natures. So our diversity statement, as you would expect, we want to have an environment where everyone, regardless of any barriers or any type of age or race or any other issues, financial resources, socioeconomic status, we want to make sure that every single person has the opportunity to reach their potential and to have contributions from the park and to give back to the park. Our core values, a couple of the core values that we talk about, and these are very ingrained into, they made me memorize them when I first got hired. There was a test and there was a chance to win a book. I did not win the book. Still a little salty about that. I thought I had the question right. But when we talk about core values, and I think it's important because this is not actually our values, but this is our mission as a park system, that guest focus, to make sure that we remember that we have a resource here in Cleveland and that you are the reason that we have that resource. We're funded by a levy, we're a nonprofit, like we exist because of individuals like you. I have a job because of individuals like you. And to make sure that we are always remembering who our main clientele is. It's our guests. It's what we're here to take care of. Dignity and respect, that's not only from, an interaction piece between me and you, but that's dignity and respect for resources, natural resources, the environment, education, things of that nature. Integrity, making sure that we're good stewards of the earth, making sure that we're good stewards of the responsibility that you have given us to be, to have the Metro Parks and what we do. Sustainability, how many people remember Edgewater when it was, I've heard Edgewater was a pretty unwelcoming place back in the day.
Pretty seedy.
Yeah. And being able to have those opportunities that, individuals and cities have trusted us with parts of their system and have given us parts of their system with the belief that we're the Metro Parks and we're going to take care of that and we're going to build them up and we're going to make them resources for the community. That sustainability piece is also in our environmental resources. Like, we are constantly out there trying to figure out, like, how do we get more parkland? How do we take what we see, this urbanization, and how do we stop it? How do we bring back, nature and kind of a meshing between city and urban life and rural life, and how do we bring that together? Making sure that we're sustaining our park systems and the city of Cleveland as a whole for not only our generation, but other generations. Teamwork, that's pretty self-explanatory. If you've ever been to any of our parks or you've ever been to a zoo, for example, we have sponsors all over the place. Even having the ability to come here and do this, having the opportunity to come and speak, developing relationships with individuals and groups that are outside of our realm helps us to be a better facility. And professionalism, I probably should have worn a tie. All sites aside, we take this, I take this seriously, and I know that a lot of individuals in the Metroparks, whether it's just your basic maintenance and custodial crew, to the individuals that are in charge of making sure that our gorilla habitat is one of the premier ones in the country. Like, we all are very passionate about what we do. You don't get into this profession unless you're passionate about it. So talk a little bit about our diversity advisory committee. Basically, calling a spade, we needed to do a lot of work on making sure that our park systems were accessible. There was a lot of issues that we had to look at. We had to come up with a strategic plan to be able to do a couple of different things. We had our major goals of getting the best people. How do we get the best people, and how do we keep the best people? How do we promote communication and understanding with our organization and other organizations? Making sure, and this is a huge one for me, number 3, ensure that Cleveland Metroparks is accessible to all guests, patrons, and visitors. And to be culturally competent, just to recognize what our role is in the city and how we can interact with different cultures and different organizations and different groups, and make sure that we are serving everyone that deserves the opportunity to be served. And making sure that we're not missing out on things that we, just because we don't think of it, like we were talking about beforehand, not having access to a lift, preventing you from being able to do an activity on one of our train rods. Like, that's something that we need to consider in all ways, shape, and form, is like, are we accessible to everyone? And that's where goal 3 and 4 really came in. And we started in 2012. If you go to our website, you can actually find the strategic plan. You can find the initiative of basically, we sent individuals to almost every park system, and we made sure that we were ADA compliant. And in a lot of areas, honestly, we weren't. We had to do a lot of work. We had to do a lot of work with our bathrooms. We had to do a lot of work with our parking lots. We had to take out chunks of the zoo because the grade wasn't acceptable. It would not allow for the facilitation of wheelchairs up and down. It was just too much. It's things like that where we've really tried to step up our game as a park system and be one of the premier leaders in the country when it comes to being accessible. As a transition plan, and I'm not going to go into a lot of the transition plan, it's online. I'm here to speak to the activities and quality of recreation that we have at the Metroparks. I just want to touch on a little bit about the accessibility and how we graded it. And our goal is in the next 5 years, and our next part of our transition plan is to be all A's. You can see that a lot of, we had some F's. We had a lot of basic accommodations that weren't acceptable. It was simple as that. We had to do a lot of work, and we were grateful to do that work. Making sure that we have the best possible facility for everyone here. A lot of what we saw was restrooms, and there was a lot of issues with site access and facilities. Something as simple as water fountains that we had to address. We had to look at, are our water fountains accessible? And they weren't. Certain ones weren't. We had to pull that stuff out. And that's stuff that until recently, and I will say as an individual, I come from a background of education, and I'm very familiar with making the classroom accessible and making sure that my students have the best opportunity to learn and become that they could. And there's things that through working at this job and being able to interact and understand more about Title II of ADA law and inclusivity when it comes to programs and spaces and locations, I never thought about making sure that a water fountain was wheelchair accessible. It's just not something that crossed my mind. But what happens is that when you get that information, you never lose that information, and you start to look at things differently. And I will tell you that has been something that has been very beneficial for me as someone that does inclusive programming, is I can look now at facilities and I can say, hey, I can't do hand cycling. We can't get into the bathroom. There's no water. The curb's too high. Things of that nature. So recognizing where we are with our lower letters and making sure that we get our minor modifications, that we do the things that we need to do to make sure that we have the most accessible opportunities and park systems in Northeast Ohio, if not in the country. Like I said, I'm really not going to go too much into the transition plan afterwards. If you're interested in learning more about it, I'd be more than happy to show you where it's on our website. I've attached my email address and my cell phone number at the bottom of our presentation at the end. So if you need to ask more information or you have any other questions, you're going to feel free to contact me. It's what I love to do. Now, what I will start with is we'll talk about some of the accessibility. This is a big part for us, and this is something that we have to work on, is our accessibility page. Something as simple as like getting our contrast changes, making sure that the brightness is at a level that makes it easier to read, that falls into compliance of signage and things like that. You know, we've been taking steps not only from a physical aspect, but we've taken steps from an electronic aspect, making sure that people can access our sites and be able to get into our sites with ease of use. That really translates into the work that the zoo mission has been doing. The zoo has been phenomenal when it comes to developing programs and really working hard to be a leader in inclusivity for zoos and other organizations. You know, one of the things that they've always talked about is this piece about inspiring personal responsibility for conserving the natural world. It's about inspiring people. It's not just about going and seeing animals. It's not just about conservation. It's not just about advocacy. It's all of those things together put into one, where we want to inspire individuals to go seek out whatever path it is that works for them, and that they're allowed to find that resource or that passion, that they're allowed to give back to the natural world. One of the commitments to inclusiveness that we recently started, we were really lucky to work with an organization called Culture City, which does a lot of work with sensory initiatives, making sure that individuals that may have autism or spectral or hypo or hypersensitivity to sound and light and things of that nature, they have places of safety and of comfort. One of the things that we have done is we have just recently put out an accessible zoo map. We really tried to make sure that we have spots in the zoo that can be easily located and easily seen. So if you do come to one of our programs at the zoo and you have a child that has autism or special needs, that does need to have a safe place that they can go to relax or to calm down or for quiet, we've been able to handle that. You know, we were able to get recognition from a pretty well-known organization, which is Culture City, as being an inclusive sensory program. We also talk about some of the accessibility features. You know, one of the things we were kind of talking about beforehand was, you know, how there are certain aspects where we need to make sure that if you are in a wheelchair, that you have access to the activities and the things that we do here, not only in the zoo, but some of the other aspects of the park. And one of the things that we first started with was, as you know, is the trams, was just making sure something as simple as the trams. They use a 4-point restraint system, making sure that individuals are secure in their wheelchairs, but we also made it a point to try to train our operators on our trams and the individuals that serve on the trams to be understanding of inclusivity and understand, you know, that there's certain things and certain ways that you're going to need to handle yourself to make sure that that tram ride is as comfortable and accommodating as possible. The trams will run usually every 15 to 20 minutes. We make it a point to go into various locations like Boomerang Train, Circle Wildlife Carousel, and our 40 feeders are all accessible now, and that our manual and powered wheelchairs can be loaded very easily onto our trams, so you can go to various locations in the park. Now this is kind of that inclusion zone piece that I was talking about. Next time you go to the zoo, I want you guys to kind of look around. You'll see these signs right here. These are that quiet area piece. What this is that's that work we've been doing with Culture City to make sure that our park systems have these places where individuals can go with sensory needs, that they can be safe and they can feel comfortable. It can be very overwhelming when you have hyper or hyposensitivity to sound or to light, or you just react differently. And something that we see is that sometimes it really helps to just have a simple space that we can go where we can just sit and we can stop and we can relax. We're also in the process of some of our nature centers. We're in the process of developing some of what you will call sensory bags, which I'll show you in a second, making sure that even our nature centers and our naturalists have items on them at all times that will help individuals that may have autism or spectrum disorders to feel comfortable and safe on any of our programs. And also making sure that our naturalists are being trained in accommodation and understanding person-first language, making sure that we are meeting the needs of all of our guests, and understanding that all of our programs are open. So how do we do that? We work together with that professionalism piece, and we make sure that everybody is on the same page with what we're trying to accomplish in different organizations. So this is that sensory bag. I'll bring this in there just because this is really cool, and I know there's a couple of teachers in here who have probably seen similar items or know somebody that has maybe a child with autism that has sensory issues. You will find these now at all of our Metroparks. Metroparks, I apologize. At our zoo, we're in the process of getting some of our nature centers to have sensory bags like this. But these are basically just items that allow for a safe well-being if a child or an individual needs to calm down or to relax or to have something to do with their hands. One of the big things that I really like are the I need. You have what are feeling thermometers, and you also have basically it's how am I feeling. It's easy for an individual. Nonverbal communication is very important. A lot of people don't think about how nonverbal communication can really put a barrier between an individual that's trying to say I'm upset or I'm sad or I'm afraid or I'm angry. Being able to have these types of feeling thermometers, which are these items that are located right here. It's just a placard card. It's about this big. On front and back side of it, it has different emotions and it has different words. So somebody that is nonverbal can quickly communicate with whoever they're with. Say they're with, not with a parent, but they're with one of our programs or they're at one of our camps. They can very quickly and easily communicate what they're feeling. So we as a staff can address that and make sure that that issue is quickly taken care of. And you will always, fidget toys, I don't care who you are, every person should have a fidget toy. They work wonders for kids, they work wonders for adults. Just having something to do with our hands that isn't our cell phone can be a huge thing. Another part that I really want to, we're in the process of working, how many people knew that we have all-terrain wheelchairs at Edgewater? Some individuals here do know that. Unfortunately, there's a lot of individuals that do not know that we have accessible wheelchairs that we will provide at places like Edgewater, Huntington Beach, and Villa Angela Beach. These things are awesome, and they are a wonderful way for us to make sure that we are as inclusive as possible, especially with all of the money and promotion that we're doing with Edgewater right now. I mean, that's a huge part of our mission as the Cleveland Metroparks is to continue to develop these areas that were given to us by the city and to make sure that they're open and they're accessible. These, like I said, these can be asked. A lot of the stuff that we're going to be talking about with these items, we ask that you give at least 72 hours notice, just because we are hopeful and we are confident that those items will start to be in more use as the years go by because of presentations like this, engaging with the community. So just making sure that that stuff is accessible and that it's there. It's the same way with some of our solo golf carts. Yeah.
With equipment like this that you can reserve at the beach or the zoo, the scooters at the zoo, why is it you guys will not store the individual's wheelchair while they're using the equipment?
That, to my understanding, and I may be wrong, and after this presentation, you and I can have a conversation, and I will check to make sure that I give you. That's a legality issue. It's a financial. If something was to happen to a $4,000 wheelchair that was under our care while a guest is out, go ahead.
I understand that. But
Yeah.
the situation I ran into at the zoo, I got on one of the scooters, and they even fought me to take my chair back to my vehicle to store.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Catch
especially when
22.
you go alone,
Yeah.
there's no way to get the chair back to your vehicle.
You know, and it might be as something as simple as us not understanding, you know, working with someone that doesn't understand how difficult what they're asking is. May not understand that, hey, you're asking me to now use a totally different piece of equipment to go and take my wheelchair, which is a very important aspect of my life, and bring that to my car and leave it there, when in all likelihood, like you said, should be open and accessible to just be able to store that there. I don't have a solid answer for you, but I will do my best to find one and figure out what we can do to make that more accommodating. Because I understand I can't imagine how frustrating that
The
would
one
be.
time I did go to the zoo a couple years ago,
Mhm.
I rented the scooter, but I had nobody to take my chair back to my car.
Yeah,
So it was like.
defeated the whole
I gotta
purpose.
leave.
Now, and once again, that was a couple of years ago. I do know that the zoo has been doing phenomenal things with making sure that it is aware of some of the maybe unaware bias that people can have when it comes to individuals with disabilities, and making sure that we're addressing that. I will still make it a point to bring that up with an individual that does our ADA programming at the zoo and see what the answer is for that. Because it's things like this. If we don't know about it, I need somebody to tell me, like, hey, this was a big issue. I wanted to go to the zoo by myself, and I couldn't even enjoy myself because the very first thing I had to do was something that I shouldn't have had to have done. So I understand that. That's a good point, and I'll definitely make it a point to figure out what that was. Sir, did you have a question in the back, Carter? Well, we do have lockers, but once again, I think we're talking about is having an accessible location that is safe. Like we said, I know some of these wheelchairs in here, they're a couple of grand. I've seen some pretty expensive pieces of equipment, and that's where that legal piece gets into. If something's under our care and something happens to it. And that could be a very practical solution. Like I said, I would definitely need to run that by, because that's not something that I've ever come across. And I appreciate bringing that to my attention. So next meeting that I have, I can ask that question. And it might be as simple as you're talking about. The guests bring a lot. There might be another solution that we haven't thought of. It's being able to brainstorm those ideas and understand, like, hey, this is a barrier. Let's do something about it and fix it. So I appreciate that question, absolutely, and I appreciate that idea. Yeah. That is, we're actually in the process of installing that. Those are Moby mats. So what those are specifically designed for wheelchair accessibility, to make sure that you can get down into certain areas, along with using our all-terrain beach wheelchair. We just purchased, I think, like a ridiculous amount of feet of this, and then we're in the process of installing it. I'm actually trying to get some pieces for my program to make places like Wallace Lake and more accessible for programming. So these will be installed very soon into places like Edgewater and Huntington. And I know that they will have access to be able to transfer pieces of that from different places to make certain areas that may be very gravelly or not have terrain that's conducive with wheelchairs, to be able to just lay that down and make it accessible. So you should see some of this by the summer of this coming summer. So, and if it's not fully installed and operational by this summer, by next summer, that'll be it. Yes, yeah, it's the same way, and I'll talk about it in a little while with the paratransit, that we're now having locations that are paratransit accessible. That's not on the website either. We're still in the process of developing and building those things up. But yes, I will promise you, as somebody that really wants to see this come in so I can do kayaking, yeah, as soon as that pops up, it will definitely be on the website. Now this is an outdoor recreation. This is more of my piece. This is huge to me. This was huge to me as an educator, and it's huge to me as now as an employee and of the Cleveland Metroparks. I love to teach. It's what I do. If you've ever been a teacher, you understand. You get into the profession because you love to do it. You get into this profession because you love to do it. I am blessed to have a really awesome job. And I believe that part of that job is making sure that I am enhancing people's lives, and I'm providing whatever opportunity, like Herb and I were talking about before the meeting, is that for a long time my position wasn't even filled. There wasn't the access to outdoor recreation equipment, adaptive equipment, and adaptive programming. And it hasn't been for a while. So being able to come in and fill this position and make sure that I'm doing what needs to be done to integrate quality outdoor recreation experiences, these are the things that I am in the process of really trying to address. A lot of the common barriers that I see, and it isn't just with making sure that our program's inclusive, It's just barriers to a lot of individuals, whether it's socioeconomic status, or it's race, or it could be something like inclusivity. Big thing that we see is transportation, don't have the right clothing needed to do it, don't have an accessible activity location, hence a lot of our parts of our park do not actually have addresses, quote unquote. So paratransit won't drop off individuals unless there's an address. Lyft and Uber won't drop off individuals unless there's an address. So making sure that we have that, adaptive equipment, and the necessary knowledge. These are the things that we are really working hard on as a department, and I'm very proud to say that we have taken some huge steps recently in making sure that we have quality equipment, that we have quality gear, that we're making sure that our locations are accessible, and that we are able to provide any item that you may not have and be able to teach you how to use any item you get. We're all really, I won't say overqualified, you can never be overqualified, but we all in our department have a passion for this knowledge piece. We love to instill that in our guests whenever we work with individuals. When we eliminate these barriers, we break down those barriers and we make sure that the Cleveland Metroparks are accessible, and we give opportunities for all individuals to get out and to enjoy nature and to have opportunities for outdoor recreation. This is one of the new signs. This is actually right in front of my office. Very proud of that. This is in Garfield Heights. It is now an official paratransit location. I have the privilege of working with a wonderful woman named Dina. And she has been able to come to my facility now to get outfitted for her kayak so we can do kayaking programs. And she had difficulty in the past because there wasn't a paratransit location. It's difficult for her to get dropped off. So now that we have things like this, we have definitive markers and locations, it makes it more accessible. Because when we talk about some of the kayaking that we do here, part of it is you have to come and you get outfitted. I mean, it's just it's a safety piece, and it's making sure that the kayak is as accessible as it needs to be so you can enjoy the experience of kayaking. Well, you need to be able to come down to my office. And it takes maybe 45 minutes, an hour. It's not a big deal. We don't charge you, none of that. But you still need to be able to find and make it to that location. So being able to have this and know that this woman was able to come and to do what she did, and actually have a picture of me working with her on the water, it was good. It was good to see the end result of that.
Is the Garfield facility like down by Tinkers Creek as well, and down in that area?
Parts of it,
Is that not?
I don't quite know where that it's an odd location because there's certain parts of Garfield that kind of break off, and then we have the waterfall. And we're very close to Ohio Erie Canalway Center. I don't know if that stands in our location or if that's closer. It might even be.
Just curious.
Yeah, that's another good. I'd have to learn. Might actually be closer.
It's right along Canal.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It probably would be part of their kind of their domain. So this is a big piece, and we'll start to talk about more of the adaptive recreation piece and some of the ways that they were accessible. I'm sorry, I got to tie my shoe. It's bothering the heck out of me. So one of the things I love about adaptive kayaking, and we talk about this, and this is something that I think is very important, is that you have almost 50 million individuals who have a disability. Those disabilities are not seen. You can't just look at somebody and say, hey, that individual has a disability. When you do, that's very closed-minded, and it sets a barrier between you and that individual. Only about 8 million people will I see that I can say without a shadow of a doubt, hey, you have some form of disability. This is one of my favorite pictures. I love this. Kayaking is wide open. The water makes everyone equal. These activities make everyone equal. When I first saw this picture and was first introduced to this idea, it's like, I can look at this and I can see there's not a single individual right there that I can point out and says, hey, this individual has a disability. We're all equal on the water. We're all equal in our kayaks. And 5 of those people are severely disabled. I don't even know which ones. Never been able to find out. Never really cared, because it really doesn't matter. What's important is that we all were able to get out and do an awesome experience and go kayaking. You're going to see a lot of our paddle adaptations and things of that nature that we have, you know, whoop, take out the ceiling. So we have pieces of equipment nowadays, and I have, if I brought the wooden paddles over there, I'll show it to you in a second. We've come, would you grab that and bring that up to me, partner? Thank you. So this was what we have. We have paddles like this. This is actually a one-arm canoe paddle. So very simple, very simplistic. Just a piece of wood to hold on to, arm, stability, and then it was used for paddle, which is excellent if you have the strength and coordination to be able to use it. Or two, you're actually doing canoeing. It doesn't really work very well if you're trying to kayak. So we have all kinds of different pieces of equipment that we use in our kayaking programs that allow us to have that type of accessibility. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the table so everybody can see. So one of the things that we have that we offer that you see up on the board, and it's right here. There's an awesome company. It's called Creating Ability. Ask Megan about it. She's actually met the owner of it. I've had the privilege of working with them on numerous occasions. They design equipment to make canoeing, stand-up paddleboard, and kayaking more inclusive to everyone. They have a passion for it. They travel. These individuals that run the company have been trained by people that travel all over the world doing inclusive adaptive kayaking. Something as simple as this, you know, having only one arm can prevent a huge barrier. Having limited grip strength can prevent, you know, is a huge barrier to be able to use kayaking. This can be simply installed. Duct tape is one of my best friends when it comes to this type of programming. I can easily install this in the bottom of a kayak. A paddle goes right in the middle of it, and depending on limited strength or whatever the rationale is for needing it, I mean, it's an easy, accessible piece of equipment that's easily installed into a kayak and allows an individual that has, you know, mobility or arm strength or grip strength or whatever the reason is for needing it. It's easily open and accessible, pops out, can be raised and lifted, so there's no fear of being trapped or contained. That's a big issue with me as a professional, is that safety piece. I need to know, regardless of whether or not you have a disability or not, it doesn't matter to me when it comes to safety. Like, I want to know that if I take a guest out on the water, that guest is coming back and that they're going to be safe and they're going to have a good time. So making sure that not only is the equipment being able to be used efficiently, but it's also safe. So for instance, if you were to flip your kayak or roll your kayak, which you have to do in one of our classes, a kayaking 1 class, to be able to get on the water, easily pops out. Installation is fairly simple, goes right back in. Another of the things, what you'll see, oh, what? Absolutely. Are we allowed? I actually bought another piece of equipment, and I won't mention it because I'm being live streamed, and I would hate to give a negative review for another piece of equipment. But that equipment did not float, and it was interesting when you have an expensive piece of equipment being used in water recreation that doesn't float. Thankfully, we were in a pool, which made it a little bit easier, but I couldn't imagine actually being out on the water on a lake or something like that. You roll your kayak, next thing you know, you got a $400 piece of equipment sitting with the fishes. So yes, field tested, float approved. All of our kayaks also float. I'd like to point that out. Those are good. And also all of our paddles, a lot of the adaptations that I'll reuse that you see on the screen right here. This can work in conjunction with the Creating Ability paddle holder. What this is for grip strength. If you have limited grip strength, I can actually attach this, your hand goes there, and I can tighten it or loosen it as needed to be able to make sure that your hand is able to hold it and to grip it. I could paddle like this with having absolutely no hand strength. In conjunction of using this piece of equipment and this tool, would have no issue paddling a kayak. We also have, say you have other pieces of equipment that we use that can be slotted on, and all of these have been field tested to make sure they're safe and that they float. But this one is a really cool one that I really like. This is just a simple wrist guard, easily comes in and out, and what it does is it attaches to the kayak, to the paddle. So I could not even have, I could have limited mobility in my hand, I could not have a hand. Regardless, what I could have is the ability to use a kayak effectively and safely, and it just pops right out.
So in that case, all you need is, well, you would need shoulder strength as well.
Shoulder strength,
To be able to,
torso rotation, even with limited trunk support, even with limited trunk capability. This is a very, very simple piece of equipment, and the length of the paddle really adds to the leverage of the water. You're able to really get the paddle in and out of the water effectively. I know that there are individuals that have used it that have almost no shoulder strength, and they're able to generate it partially from their arms, partially from their head. Now, another thing that you'll see that we use when we were talking about this beforehand, I'm a huge fan of styrofoam. This is basically how the process works. Is you insert foam. This allows you to build up, and this is the part where I walk a little bit back inside.
We're good.
Make sure I don't take out anything. So what we have here, this is basically just foam. It's built up. This individual had limited trunk stability on their left side. I had to build up the kayak to have the stability and the padding necessary to keep them upright. They also had balance issues, so I made it a point to add some dump to the seat, which means when I say dump, that means I'm just lifting the seat to make sure that you're able to sit back and your back is arched. And then what we do is this individual also had was also a wheelchair with no sensitivity in her legs. We were able to build in a bulkhead. There's actually a foam bulkhead that I've built into the front of this that helps position the legs to be able to have those points of contact needed to do kayak. And it was literally foam and duct tape. Like I said, it's my best friend. We call it Hillbilly Chrome where I come from in West Virginia. But it can be amazing. It works wonders. It does really good. But also, since we're kind of moving our way from the foam and trying to be more integrated, we also have items like this, which are installed. This is also from Creating Ability. This can be installed into a canoe or into a kayak. Has the ability to have the different various lengths of trunk support. Comes in, comes out, can be raised, lowered, depending on what the need is. I can actually take pieces off completely. If you don't need something, you don't need it. No reason for it to be there interfering with it. So, and then we had mentioned talking about outriggers. These right here just would attach to the back of the kayak. It's a simple piece of equipment that's actually hooked onto the kayak. Big flotation devices that adds to the stability of the kayak. So if there's concerns with balance or concerns, sometimes when you have that limited trunk stick, you can kind of have a tendency to lean, and there's that concern, hey, if I lean too far over, I'm going to roll it over the water. When you add these outrigger systems to the kayak, it makes it very simple, very easy, and it's very solid. It's darn near impossible to flip a kayak with these on there.
It really is.
Yeah,
I tried it.
You would actively have to try. This is one of the women that has been in our program, and this is actually some of the equipment that she uses. She's actually using the Creating Ability piece right here. She only has the use of one arm. This is at the Upper Cuyahoga. This is a kayaking trip that we did there. She also has the outrigger. You can't see. Oh, yeah, you can. There's the outrigger system right there that she has installed. We have these kayaks. They're accessible. They're open to anybody to use. I do specific kayak programs, which are just for us, inclusive of that programming. So we have all of this open. Like I said, this was the process. I actually even brought that kayak. This is what I started with, was a couple of pieces of foam, a bunch of duct tape, and we just built the side of it up until you ended up with the support that was needed. And even in the way that we built the box, there's a lot more support and foam on the right side where these trunk issues and the stability issues were than there is on our left side. So you don't have to go crazy, you don't have to build the whole thing up. And this took about 35 minutes. And then we were able to use it for the activity, absolutely no problem. Now, we also have our hand cycling program. I'm a big fan of the hand cycling program. Originally, hand cycling was started as a fitness tool. This was actually to help build strength. But what we found is that it allowed people with a variety of disabilities to get out and to do recreation that they may not have been able to do at one point. Great uses for hand cycle is it helps with the upper body strength, it helps with your cardiovascular health, and it just promotes a sense of mental fitness. Just because you're outdoors and you're getting able to do this. This is one of my friends. This is friend so well that I've blanked on his name. This is one of my VA guys. He is blind. He is able to see contrast. So one of the things that we do is we have a rider in front of him and behind him, and we have high-colored shirts and vests. So he's able to see the color and the contrast. So he's able to follow, can see us and knows where the trail is, and was able to do one of our hand cycling programs up in Garfield Heights and had an absolute blast with it. And the cool thing about our hand cycling programs is that they can be adjusted. I have multiple types of hand cycles that can be used, and a lot of the same principles that I use with my kayak to build up, a lot of the principles that I use with my kayak to build up for like trunk support and stability, that stuff easily translates over to my hand cycle. So I can do a lot of the same things to build up sections and sides of the hand cycle to help balance issues like that. And then some of the cool equipment that we have, there's a variety of adaptations that can be used in which you can pull off the actual component for the hand cycling. And what you can do is say, like, when we're back to our limited strength in the hand issue, something as simple as this fits over the wrist, attached, don't even have to be able to grip, and it will actually fit in a slot right here. So I have one arm that I'm using, and then I'm using my other arm for the rotation. Don't even have to worry about the grip strength. They're also, the way that the cycles are set up with the gear system, it can be very easy to start in case you have limited strength. You may have mobility, no mobility issues, but you may have limited upper body strength. Very simple to ride. Programs that we do, usually all flat land. I'm a big fan of Acacia. If you haven't been down to Acacia, which is out in my neck of the woods in Heights, wonderful area. We do a lot of hand cycling programs out of there. And there's not really anything that I can't do to be able to adapt this. And usually the only time I've ever had to be super concerned is just when people have used all their energy really quick and we've been having to go back. But as it stands, I've run programs in gyms, I've run programs on our all-purpose terrain, easily accessible, and I have, right now as it stands, I have 9 functioning hand cycles. And I have a bunch of hand cycling programs that are coming up this summer that are open access. We do a lot of adaptive cooking in Cleveland and Metroparks. We work with organizations like Leap and Mayfield Village, in which we try to do some of our adaptive kayaking. I do a program for Mayfield Village every summer, in which I do an adaptive camp out where we get a go and we do a small hike, and we'll actually set up our tents, and we will make sure that we cook, that we practice leave no trace principles, that we do things like fire building, cooking using portable camp stoves, like making sure that the experience is just like anybody else would do. And that's the important thing to me, is that I want to be able to have that experience where regardless of what the disability is, that the person is able to come out and enjoy all the access that we have. One of my favorite pictures was us cooking s'mores. We were down at North Chagrin Nature Center. We had a chance, we have some awesome naturalists down there. We had just gotten back from a nice little jaunt with a naturalist named Jeff, who had taken us to see the owl aviary and had allowed us to kind of hang out with the owls and get to know their history and their story. And then we came back and we made s'mores. There wasn't a lot of,
Good question, the bonfire there, is there a website to go to see when you have those?
Absolutely.
Because there's a lot of people in there that like bonfires.
There's a lot of places that I could have a fire at without having too much issue. This one is at North Chagrin Nature Center. There is all-purpose trail that leads all the way up to the fire ring. I think there's maybe a 5-foot section in which there may be slight difficulty with wheelchairs depending on whether it's been muddy or
So
rainy.
is it grass all the way around the pit, or is
It's grass, it's usually solid grass all the way around the pit, but with the access of the moving mats and things like that, we can easily make it accessible. And we actually had a few individuals came out with their caregivers that were in walkers that had no issue. We had one young lady that was in a wheelchair, and she had no issue. My only concern would be with weather, with it being a little bit wet, but that's something that we could always work around very easily. And at the end, I will be giving out my information. What? Oh, somebody wants to go out to a bonfire. We'll make sure we have
Always.
plenty of opportunities coming up where to get out and do activities like our cooking. More of my VA guys. This is just me. I consider it a huge privilege to work with veterans. I absolutely love it and adore it. It's one of the best parts of my job. I work a lot with the VA Site Center, so we do a lot of our hiking, our hand cycling, do a lot of adaptive snowshoeing, which is really cool to do. And we always end up eating some kibasas and listening to the old guys. They talk a lot of smack, and it's really good to hear their history. But it's that camaraderie piece, it's that sustainability piece, it's that getting everybody involved with nature piece that I really love and appreciate. This is some of the pictures from our camp out with Mayfield Village. These are some more of my VA guys. This guy, Sam, he was from Georgia, and he was up here for all about 3 weeks. We came from Georgia to Cleveland and had absolutely no supplies. You come up to the site center and you stay for a couple of weeks, and they work with you on a variety of classes in which you become more proficient, like in your home life or in your job life. Say your site has started to fade because of maybe a combat injury or something of that nature, and it may be years after that injury has happened. So you may find yourself at the VA Site Center a decade after you left active duty, and you're needing to learn how to do some basic skills. So you come up to the VA, you do your Site Center, and they partner with us, and we take them out on activities. So watching Sam, then it comes back down to that, adequate clothing and providing with the needs. He comes from southern Georgia. There's not a lot of snow in southern Georgia. And he was able to come up. We were able to outfit him with everything he needed. We had coats, we had hats, we had gloves, we had the equipment, we had boots for him to use, we had snowshoes, and we were able to get him out on the trail. Now I'm in the process of, they do make adaptive rails for wheelchairs that I have seen, and I hate to say it, they just look like modified skis. I see absolutely no reason why those can't be used in conjunction with our staff. So being able to get out and do some of our cross-country trails and stuff like that, we have tons of all-purpose and route trails. So hopefully by 2021 or winter of 2020, 2021, we will have a more inclusive snowshoeing program and snow sledding program for individuals. Yeah.
Question on the snow program.
Yeah.
I'm looking to become a sled dog team, but in a chair.
Ooh.
What would you guys do for something like that in the parks? Do you have to get special permits, or?
I don't have an answer for that. I know there is something called skijording, which is cross-country skiing using dogs, and I know that we have ran programs before in which you bring your pups and you can actually, we'll give you a pair of cross-country skis and we'll teach you how to train your dogs to go left and right. It's been years since we've done that. I don't know what the permit is because of some of our leash laws. All of our parks, you must have your dog leashed. I, once again, would need to find more information about that.
I'd like to learn about that.
Yeah, but I don't see any reason why. My goal is to make things happen. We can figure out ways to make that happen. So that'll give me definitely something to think about. I mean, it'd be the same basic premise. The sled versus the dogs. Now my mind's running. But so our adaptive snowshoeing program, and just making sure that people, the cool thing about our terrain here is, while it seems hilly, a lot of our park systems are fairly flat. We have a ton of trail that is just flat, it's well groomed, it doesn't need a lot of work. It would be easy to run programs on. A lot of the trail that we do with our adaptive hiking is on our all-purpose trail. But the fact that we have those 23,000 acres, so it could be more than that, we have a ton of different terrain, which makes it accessible. We do a lot of trails. There are a lot of the bridle trails are a prime example. A lot of our bridle trails are pretty well groomed because of the need for horses and to make sure that they're clear. A lot of those are easy access for motorized wheelchairs. Also, just having somebody come with you to get over the soft spots. There are adaptive all-terrain wheelchairs that we were looking at. I can't make any promises or commitments because those things are very, very pricey. But once again, if that's what needs to happen to make sure that our park system's inclusive, then we'll figure out a way to make it happen. But a lot of what we do is, as you can see right here, this is one of our lead groups. This was just the bridle trail. It's just being able to go to the bridle trail. He had a more aggressive electronic wheelchair, and he was able to have, we had absolutely no issues.
There's a good area down off Riverview I go to quite often that is Chalet's Farm Market.
Oh.
And then you can take that going to the Beaver Pond.
Yeah.
And then all areas going toward you'll see the railroad and everything else.
And it's
very accessible.
awesome.
There's some hills, but
very little difficulty.
very little difficulty.
And that's what it is. It's
And
just
it's shaded as well. So.
that's a huge that's a huge component, and it's just learning things like this, because one of the positives about my job is that there's a lot of new things that I'm learning to do and to find out and how to incorporate it. But also one of the negative things is I don't know spots like that. I've only been doing the job for about a year, so when I hear a guest tell me, "Hey, you can go to this spot and it's
they have
accessible,"
restrooms
yeah,
as well.
those are those things that as the community develops in Northeast Ohio, become more inclusive. We have that information, and now I know next time I want to do a hike, I can go to this location. So being able to identify, and that's what we're really looking at right here, this piece. There's a trail for everyone. We just got to find it. I just need to know, what are the accessibility issues? What are the things that are needed? What do we have to do to make it happen? And that's really that's what a lot of this about is. Just we got to figure out solutions. And this I just put on there. I'll be honest. The adaptive fishing component, a lot of it's very simple to do adaptive fishing. There's a lot of components that were already made. There's a lot of anglers that have spent a lot of time trying to figure out ways to make fishing more inclusive. And there's a ton of equipment out there that's fairly simple to modify. I just like this picture. This is, once again, this was one of our Mayfield groups. I know you can't even see it, but that's the fish that he caught, and it took him 6 hours to catch a fish. And originally it was the worm. He didn't want to touch the worm. He has tactile issues. He's on the spectrum, and he's uncomfortable with touching things that are slimy and dirty. So we had to work him up and progress him and get him to finally get a hold of the worm, and then it was putting it on the hook, and then the hook had to go in the water. And after all of this, it was a 6-hour process. He throws it in, we're getting ready to leave, and he gets a bite, and he pulls it out, and he pulls it out right there. And it was the coolest thing. If I could have mounted it on the wall, I would. But it was just the experiences like that. It's simple stuff that we're using. And making sure we do have accessible fishing programs. If you go down to Martin Luther King Boulevard, right across from the VA Site Center, that location is 100% accessible, and you do not need a license to fish out of there. So it's one of the few places in the area where you do not need a license. And if you have some form of disability, whether physical or cognitive, it doesn't matter, you can actually get a free fishing license from the state of Ohio. They will give you a license for free, so we love that.
Does the Metroparks run that whole facility on Martin Luther King?
No,
or just
that's
that part?
city. They are kind enough to let us use that for some of our adaptive derbies that we do during the summer, but that's staffed and it's fed by them. It's all taken care of the city of Cleveland. And just various opportunities. And then just to end with our solo riders. Does anybody? We were talking about the Masters earlier. Do we have any golfers in here? Yeah. You familiar? I'm clear you're familiar with the solo rider program. Do you do any of the adaptive golfing?
The 3 of us are together in the golf program.
Okay.
We are using a Paramobile,
Okay. Awesome.
so we wish we had those in
Yeah, it's a far better piece of equipment, but
Yeah.
far more expensive also.
Yeah.
I use my chair. I've been golfing since 1990. I use my chair, and not that I go and do 360s on the green at all. But I wanted to go out to Washington Park. I wanted to go to Cleveland Metroparks golf courses. They talk to me and say, "Hey, you know what? You're in a wheelchair. I don't want you to play golf."
No, the cool thing about we
Well, I don't want to use that though.
What, you don't want to use?
Well, I don't know.
And that's something that the pro at the shop would. I
Ooh,
don't see.
Tom.
Yeah, I don't see any reason. I mean, we have these. We have all of these solo riders are at Shawnee Hills. They're at Seneca and Big Met.
Sure.
No reservations. I mean, it would be. I see no reason why it wouldn't be accessible. I love the carts those ones with the ability to move up and down, the turning, the lifting capabilities. Those are phenomenal. And what golf facility is that out of North Royalton?
North Olmsted.
North Olmsted, that facility, yeah. Dina, the woman I work with, she does golfing there sometimes too, and she speaks very highly of that program. So the ones that the solo riders that we have are just the rotating seats, with the goal of in the future being able to get the ones that have the ability to pneumatics that lift for easier use. Once again, no reservation are necessary, but we just strongly recommend that if you're interested in golfing and you do go down, just call, make sure that they're there, because sometimes they may take them off site to other golf courses depending on the program. But just make sure that we're getting back there in time so anybody can get out there and golf. So that basically, that covers a lot of the outdoor recreation pieces that we have. This is my email address, and I apologize tremendously. I was so heck bent on getting the kayak into the van that I left a stack of business cards at the house, and I apologize tremendously for that. That is my personal email address at the parks. What? Okay, yep, and that is my office number. I'm always up for a conversation. I hope that you will call me in the very near future so I can figure out your answers. And if you were interested in getting involved in any of these programs, or if you want to do the adaptive kayaking or the hand cycling or get involved in some of the other programs, feel free to contact me. Like I said, for outfitting and things of that nature, it's free. ADA law says that I'm not going to charge. We only charge for the price of the class. So even if it takes me 3 or 4 hours to make sure that a kayak is properly outfitted or that a hand cycle is properly outfitted, so be it. Perfectly okay. And we have opportunities for all kinds of different levels of kayaking and programs of that nature. So feel free to contact me at the office. I'm in charge of the inclusive program for our outdoor recreation department, so you'll be working one-on-one with me. Does anybody have any questions, any feedback, anything that they thought about? Like, really, I appreciated the questions that were fielded because that's stuff that makes me think, how can I better serve, the community?
I have a question about the autism adaptations. That's almost earth-shattering. That's life-changing for kids and adults
Yeah.
who are on the spectrum and who have never been even diagnosed but utilize something like that. Are you borrowing that from something, or is that
No, I
new?
mean, there's been a big push. I mean, if you look at, my uncle used to be the director of COSAD at the Science Center down in Columbus.
Sure.
And they've had an inclusive sensory program for years. A lot of the major museums and things, science centers, and zoos have been all working towards being more inclusive. But one of the problems is it's only in the last 20 years that we really started to identify that need for sensory relaxation when we look at the spectrum. You probably experienced it with your kids in the classroom.
Schools have sensory rooms.
Yeah, we do. And it took us, I don't know why it took us so long, but at some point we were like, hey, the things that we're using here can be easily translated.
Are the trams at the zoo always running that would accommodate a wheelchair?
Yes. So the trams will always run now. The times may change during.
Well,
Yeah.
you can always work around 15 minutes or 20 minutes
Yeah,
here.
I mean, the times may change depending on guests or amount
Sure.
of guests or programs, but yes, every one of the trams does have the accessibility.
Is Blossom part of the Metroparks?
That's Cuyahoga Valley National Park.
Because we've used their trams.
Some of us have used
Right,
those
Barb?
trams.
Well, oh,
Yeah.
Any fishing piers that go into Lake Erie that are wheelchair accessible?
They're in the process of building the new pier that maybe, I think it's gonna be unlocked this summer. It's gonna be up closer past Edgewater, out in that area, and yes.
There is one out past Meadow where I live, and goes out 60 feet, and down the hill is a ramp. I mean, you're gonna push a mile while a person can walk 500 feet down a stairs, but it is wheelchair accessible.
But I do know that all of our additions that are coming in and the new pier that we're developing, it will be ADA accessible, and you will be able to push into the water, so you'll be able to do fishing. So, and then we're also in the process of adding, pushing for more adaptive kayaking docks, so we can launch like in the Rocky River.
Fishing would be good if you had a pole holder.
Oh, yeah,
something for
absolutely.
bait.
You get those, we have sit-atop kayaks that can be easily outfitted. I mean, a lot of, some of the other equipment that I use is for sit-atops. And for those that aren't familiar with a sit-on-top kayak, the basic, it's exactly what it sounds like. You sit on top, you have, this is just a regular cockpit with a sit-on-top kayak. This is all molded down, so there isn't this area right here where you have to get in and sit. You just sit. So we use those, and I know that there's a lot of guys that go down to Lake Hinkley. There's a lot of fishing in Hinkley of kayaks and stand-up paddleboards. I've seen a couple of guys out there that have modified stand-up paddleboards that have a seat that they use for. So that's a good idea, and that's something I've been pushing for, and hopefully we'll have in the next few years. Is adaptive kayak fishing. So
How do you get like a wheelchair person, how do you get them into a kayak?
we have a variety of methods. We actually have this wonderful piece of equipment right here. This is one of our transfer chairs. Basic premise is that that is a kid's kayak. So what this would do, let's see the best ways to demonstrate this. So let's see. There, nailed it. Stay.
Kind of.
Okay, yeah, so you get the idea. So what this does is this will actually fit, and I apologize for not, I will bring it back there and demonstrate. It actually just fits over the kayak like that, and then what happens is that this piece goes down, goes there, sit on it, transfer,
So you transfer onto that,
transfer onto it.
Yeah.
and then slide
Push up.
over.
I pull that, you sit in. Now there's also other ways to do it. There's a variety of different ways in which you can have transfer points. Back in the day, it used to just be a milk crate with some foam on it and some duct tape, in which we transfer from wheelchair to transfer point to kayak. Fairly simple to do. But yes, there is a variety of methods to get individuals out of their wheelchairs comfortably. And a lot of times, depending on, a lot of times they don't even need help. I've worked with individuals before that just don't even need help getting in, they just do their thing, and tell us what they need and facilitate the process. That's always awesome when you have somebody that's just wanting to just jump in and do out. And we can usually get it, I think, outfitted in 30, 40 minutes.
I was gonna ask you, what would that paddle into that adaptive
Oh, unfortunately, what it would do is I grab the wrong size paddle. And it will not.
That goes between your legs, right?
This part goes between your legs. So what you would do right here, these parts bulk, and then it's just that motion. So it just moves, and then what you can do is you can literally, if I had brought the correct paddle, I apologize for that. But the basic premise is just being able to hold it with, it's on video, sorry about that. So, and then it's a rotating rocking motion. And this can be lifted depending on the height that it needs to go, or it can be lowered. And the cool thing about the way that it works is it also can be moved forward and backwards. So for example, if we get an individual in the kayak and it starts to feel uncomfortable and like a shoulder and arm start to have tension on the tricep or something, we can scoot it forward or scoot it back, which will alleviate some of the stress and uncomfortability. Start to engage different muscles. So, is there any other questions? Any other things that I can answer? Awesome. Well, I would hope that everybody gets that number down. If not, Megan, you have my information. You are more than happy to give it to anybody that wants to give it or have it. And if nobody else has any questions,